Stacey, I don't get what they did this offseason. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. And it just seems like it's got to be so frustrating when you root for a team that's right on the precipice of being a really dominant team and doesn't try to take advantage of it. I don't quite understand it at all.
You are Locked On Yankees, your daily New York Yankees podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Yankees, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm Stacey Gotsoulias. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. With me, as usual, my co-host, Brian McKeon. Brian.
Stacey, I am battling through the Super Bowl Sunday. I am currently sick with a cold, and it is debilitating. But as the players will, I will also battle through.
Yes. This is Monday's show, so we have no idea right now who.
Yes, but we record on Sunday.
The Super Bowl, so congrats to whoever did.
Yes.
Yeah. Before we get started, don't forget, subscribe to Locked On Yankees on whichever podcasting platform you prefer. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, like our videos, hit the bell so you're notified when they go live, leave comments, do all that jazz. On today's show, our last in the series of how did the divisions do during the offseason? And we're looking at the AL East because the Yankees are in the AL East. We're also going to look at the NL East. We're just going to compare the divisions and see what everyone did in the offseason. And is there a Yankee player who compares to Aaron Rodgers, but not in the way you think? We're going to get to that later. But first, let's go through the NL East and see how those teams did during the offseason. Now, caveat, the offseason is still in play, and some of these may change. There might be last-minute moves made, but this is what's going on now.
Yeah, and throughout the month of February, we will update you guys on moves that are made by other teams, obviously. But what's interesting about the National League East, and me and Stacey certainly did our complaining about teams that did nothing during the offseason, the National League East had a lot of movement around teams. The teams that didn't do as much tend to be teams that are a little more competitive, and the teams that kind of like the way their roster is already formed. And teams that did do a lot actually did do something to try to improve themselves. So you got to say there's a lot to be hopeful about when it comes to the National and American League East as opposed to the other divisions around baseball.
Yeah.
So Stacey, let's get into it. The Phillies, they acquired Jesus Luzardo from the Marlins. That Marlins are the one of these teams in these divisions who decided to do nothing. Jordan Romano signed as a free agent to the Phillies, and they lost Jeff Hoffman in free agency. And that could be a big loss for them out of the back end of their bullpen. But other than that, I fully expect the Phillies to be a 90-plus win team again and be one of the more dominant teams in the National League.
Yeah. Hoffman went to the Blue Jays, didn't he?
Correct, yeah.
Right? So,
yeah.
Romano, it's almost like Romano for Hoffman in a way.
Yeah, in a way, I kind of like Hoffman a little more, to be honest with you, but we'll see. I'd rather him not be in the Yankees division, but
yeah,
we'll see how it goes.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that in segment 2 because there were some moves I forgot about that some of these teams made, and I looked and thought, oh, okay, it's going to be a little more competitive than we may have thought.
Speaking of which, the New York Mets, they made a lot of moves. Don't know if they're all amazingly impressive moves, but nonetheless, they are moves, and we'll see how good the Mets are this year. They signed Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Nick Madrigal, Ryan Stanek, Clay Holmes, AJ Minter, Griffin Canning, Frankie Montas, and Sean Manaea. They acquired Jose Siri from the Rays in a trade. They lost Jesse Winker, Luis Severino, Drew Smith, Brooks Raley, Jose Iglesias, Harrison Bader, Adam Ottavino, and JD Martinez. Not much on their loss category. I mean, Severino was good for them. But other than that, they didn't lose a lot of big pieces to their team. Certainly gained a lot. Brought back, signed Juan Soto, brought back Pete Alonso, not Pete Davidson, Pete Alonso. Made decent moves. I will say this. The Mets are depending. The Mets last year had their success based on a lot of guys that they signed off the cheap having career years.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be expecting the same thing out of these pitchers that they brought back in this year. And I don't know if you're going to necessarily get that. So I don't know how confident the Mets I'd be this year. I do feel like because of the splash moves they made, that people are going to tend to overrate them and overanalyze how good they actually can be this year. I think they'll be good. I don't know if they'll be one of the top tier teams in the league. I don't know if they'll be a World Series contender. I don't know if you agree with that or not, Stacey. It just feels like a lot of the moves they made Big splash moves, sure. But as a roster as a whole, they're expecting a lot of guys that don't have unbelievably great track records to once again have great years for them.
Yeah, it's a risk when you do that sort of thing. We've seen the Yankees do that in some cases. But I mean, we'll see how that works out. One correction.
Okay.
They lost Jesse Winker, but then they signed him. Like
Oh, yeah, they did bring him back. Yeah.
Yeah, they brought him back. Yeah.
Yeah. My apologies on that one.
No.
The Atlanta Braves moving on. Interesting with the Braves, they signed Jurickson Profar. They signed Chasen Shreve and Garrett Cooper, former Yankee greats, to minor league deals, and they lost Travis d'Arnaud. Now, interesting to note, when we were first doing the rundown, Stacey mentioned to me earlier she was surprised about how little the Braves appeared to do. And I brought this up that it does feel like the Braves might be one of those teams that are crediting last season to the losses they had when it comes to injuries and underperforming and stuff. Now, they did lose Max Fried as well, but I don't know if the Braves are as concerned. They do have a young roster who's been signed for long term for a while now.
Yeah.
It does feel like the Braves are just hoping that, maybe putting last year up to a toss-up if we just couldn't stay healthy. And maybe they're depending on having a healthy year this year and seeing what they can do. I still think they're one of the top tiers in the National League.
Yeah, because when I was looking at their moves, I looked at it 3 times because I thought maybe I missed something. And then I sort of remembered. I was like, yeah, they didn't really do that much this offseason. And then you joked about the Shreve and Cooper moves. And I was like, yeah, big deal.
Yeah, that's about it. But, if you get Acuna healthy again next year and he's able to stay on the field, the Braves did have a weird season last year where they couldn't really stay healthy and still won a lot of games.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens if they wind up staying healthy. They did lose a top tier pitcher in their rotation. That could be a big deal. But I think the Braves will be just fine. I think they'll be one of the teams that are ahead of the Mets. I think the Phillies and Braves are ahead of the Mets going into next year at the top of this division. That's how I look at it, at least. 2 teams that'll be towards the bottom. The Marlins and Nationals. We'll go to the Marlins first. They traded Jesus Luzardo to the Phillies, and they traded Jake Berger to the Rangers, and they signed no one. So another one of those teams, Stacey, that we always look at and always question, how in the world do people root for these teams? The Marlins
Well, I mean, as we know, not that
that
many people root for the Marlins, or at least they're not going to the games because it's a pain in the butt to go to the stadium. From what people tell me in Miami, it's not like that. It's not that good of a location. Not as bad as St. Pete, but not a great location. And why would you want to go see a baseball game where the team isn't even trying to make the team better? Or the ownership isn't trying to make the team better.
I went to a game there. The problem with that stadium is it's outside of Miami, and it's technically in the Miami County area,
Right.
but it's in an area that is not very let's just say there's a large police presence in this area. Not a great area. And there are people that are offering you to park your car on their front lawn for like $10. So that's where Marlins Stadium is located, right in the dead middle of nothing. So,
my dad would probably take them up on that offer because he was that type of, he'd be like, oh, okay, $10. Yeah, I'll do that.
That is directly across the street from the stadium.
Yeah.
Like that is what's directly across the street. So not the best environment at all. Again, you're right, though. I don't know how people root for teams like this. They just, they had something brewing a few years ago when they made the playoffs, and everyone thought, okay, maybe, and they just continue to just not put an effort in.
Like, I know I knock on Pittsburgh all the time, and, we should, but at least when you go there, it's a really nice stadium with a great view. So even if you're just seeing a regular season baseball game, you get to sit in that stadium. Same thing with Cincinnati. Great American Ballpark looks like a really great place to watch baseball. So at least you got that going. But in Miami, you don't even have the home run sculpture anymore. Like, what makes it fun in there?
Nothing. There's nothing fun about it at all. I don't know why. I don't know how anyone roots for a team like that. Again, no motivation to try and win.
Yeah.
At all. Nothing. So really, really tough place. A team that makes moves and weirdly enough used to be involved in all the big signings and has now not spent as much money lately. But the Washington Nationals. Remember the period of time when they were signing everybody to big time deals?
Well, kind of proving by some of them.
Yeah, but kind of proving that these lower market teams can actually sometimes spend when they feel like it. I digress. Nationals, they traded for Nathaniel Lau. They signed Mike Soroka, Josh Bell, Ahmed Rosario, Jorge Lopez. They lost Joey Gallo in free agency. And little did a lot of people realize, because I didn't realize this until I looked it up, and I don't know if you realized either, Patrick Corbin opted out of his deal. Now, no one's picked him up. I don't know if anyone will.
He was awful.
He was awful. And I always link back Patrick Corbin to all of the people that destroy Brian Cashman about guys that he doesn't sign. All the moves that have been made over the last couple of years when he goes after a guy, sets his price, doesn't get the guy, and everyone kills him for it. No one gives him credit for the Patrick Corbin one.
Yeah, they dodged a bullet with that one.
But I don't know. It's not. Here's the thing. It's not dodging a bullet to the extent of, they didn't decide they didn't want Patrick Corbin. You know what I mean? And they didn't decide, he didn't choose the Nationals over the Yankees. He chose because of the offer. The Nationals upped the offer. They gave him the extra year, and the Yankees didn't. And the Yankees held their price firm. This is what we're willing to pay him. And that was it. And it turned out to be the right move. The Nationals lost a ton of money on this. The Yankees made a ton of money on this. They saved a ton of money on this. This is one of the few times where it actually severely worked out in the Yankees' favor by not signing the guy. So, but no one gives him credit for that, Brian Cashman. But this is the one move where he actually played it perfectly.
Congrats. Let's give him kudos. Not that he's watching this, but I'll give you kudos, Brian, on that one. Cashman, not you, but also you. You get kudos too.
Appreciate it.
Don't forget, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button on our videos, hit the notification so you know when our videos go up. You can also join the Locked On Yankees Insiders Club. The link is in the description. You'll get text from us. You can text us questions, comments, links to videos that make me angry. I spoke about this before we started recording. Maybe I'll talk about it later in the show. Reactions to trades and signings. We send out lineups during the season, roster moves, and breaking news, basically, so you don't have to check social media. There's a 14-day free trial. Coming up next, we're going to look around the AL East and see how everyone did this offseason, because there are some surprising moves that I kind of forgot about. This offseason felt like forever, didn't it? Yeah, we're going to discuss that next.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in than on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or I'm picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your choice at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thanks again for making Locked On Yankees your first listen. Remember that every Friday is Fan Mail Friday. You can leave questions underneath our videos during the week, or you can join the Locked On Yankees Insiders Club to get top priority on Fan Mail Friday. The link is in our description. So, Stacey, we move into the AL East, where a lot of teams made a lot of moves, and there were some impressive offseasons out of the AL East, starting with the Boston Red Sox, who I think in a low-key manner had one of the best offseasons in all of baseball, to be honest with you. They traded for Garrett Crochet. They signed Walker Buehler. They signed Patrick Sandoval, Aroldis Chapman, and Justin Wilson. They lost James Paxton, Nick Pivetta, Kenley Jansen, and Tyler O'Neill. Not a lot of value went out, but a lot of value came in on a team that was already building towards something last season. Stacey, I love what they did, and I'm no one to sit here and praise the Red Sox, but they had an unbelievable offseason, in my opinion.
Yeah, they had a really good, underrated offseason. Baseball Perspective released their PECOTA numbers for the season, and I feel like the Red Sox number is way too low for what they've done. Like, I think the Red Sox are going to be one of those teams that if they don't make the playoffs, it's going to be by like a game. And it's
what did they give them?
I saw someone say that it was around 79 or 80 wins, which I thought was way too low for them.
So do I.
Yeah.
I see them as like an 87 to 90 win team. That's where I see them. Not quite eclipsing the 90 win mark and being this great, unbelievable team, but they could have a really good year. Remember, they were competitive last year up until what? Mid-August? They stayed in the race. They were a really good team last year, and they pitched their butts off last year, and all they did was add to that. I like what they did this offseason. This is a team that has caught a lot of flack over the last few years, Stacey, for not signing guys and not spending money and not making moves. Made plenty of moves this offseason, and they were involved in every big free agent too. Now, whether they got them or not is a different story. but
Right.
they were heavily involved in the Juan Soto negotiations. They were involved with guys. So if I were a Red Sox fan, I'd feel good about the direction this team's going in. A
Yep.
team that I wouldn't feel as good about, that, by the way, if we can just mention, is there a franchise in all of baseball, Stacey, that had a bigger upside 5 years ago than the Blue Jays?
Yeah. I mean, they were almost lumped in with the Orioles just because they
Yeah.
had so much young talent and they figured they'd build around that core of young guys and that it would take off from there. And we're in 2025 now and nothing's happened.
They have not had their big year that we've all expected them to have. It hasn't ever clicked for them. They made a lot of moves like 2 or 3 off seasons ago to bring a lot of pitching in and everything, thinking that would help. It didn't. I don't know what to expect out of them. They signed Max Scherzer, who's 57 now, I believe. Jeff Hoffman, Anthony Santander, Josh Walker. They signed Jordan Romano from the Phillies. That was no, not from the Phillies. That was the move we kind of talked about of bringing in a closer that they got. Traded for Miles Straw, traded for Andres Jimenez, and they lost Ryan Yarbrough. Not a terrible year out of the Blue Jays, but they traded for Jordan Romano. Not a terrible offseason for the Blue Jays, especially with the amount of players they were in on in the offseason. But Stacey, overall, I don't know how I'd feel about them going into next year.
Yeah. I'm not sure either, because even with that core and with some of the guys they had on the staff, they'd make the playoffs and then get swept in the first round. That happened twice to them. Also, same thing with the Orioles. Like, you have this young, exciting team and you're thinking, okay, they have this wide window.
Yeah.
They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to do all these big things. And, actually similar to the Yankees of 2017 too, because you had Gary Sanchez, you had Aaron Judge, and then you had this group of older dudes around them. And you thought, oh, okay, this is going to be the start of something. And it feels like a lot of the teams in the AL East have underperformed expectations. And the ones that you didn't expect to do are doing better.
The difference
some
is, too, the
years.
Yankees have been able to pivot from the guys that didn't necessarily work out, right? They moved on from Greg Bird. They moved on from Gary Sanchez.
Mhm.
The Blue Jays have tended to not do that. They tend to stick by these guys. And when it doesn't work out and you stick by them, you're asking for disaster when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I will say, if the Blue Jays get off to a bad start, which is definitely possible and has happened in the last few years, look for them to shop Vlad Guerrero Jr. I wouldn't be surprised at all. You got to get something back for a player like that. They'll be involved in negotiations. I'd expect them to, just because who haven't they been involved in over the last 5 or 10 years? But Stacey, if they get off to a bad start by June, I could absolutely picture his name being involved in the trade market. Absolutely.
Yes, I would agree with that. I had a thought and I just totally lost it. Oh well. Jordan Romano is with the Phillies now.
So that was one thing. They lost Jordan Romano.
Yeah.
Sometimes MLB's transaction page is not the best place to search for these kind of things. Having said that, let's move on to the Baltimore Orioles. They signed Ramon Laureano, Charlie Morton, Andrew Kittredge, Tyler O'Neill, Gary Sanchez. They lost John Means, Brooks Kriske, Corbin Burns, Anthony Santander, and James McCann. I'll say this, Stacey, the sense that I get from around all of baseball, and specifically from our show, what an underwhelming offseason they had. The Baltimore Orioles. New ownership, a chance where young players are being paid no money and a chance to strike. Of being able to be this good team that's a top tier thought of team in the American League and a team that could potentially win a World Series with talent, and they come out and just spend no money at all and are involved in none of these big time players. I don't get what they did this offseason. Supposedly Corbin Burns just wanted to be in Arizona, and that's fine, but to not even be involved in the negotiations for Corbin Burns is a whole other thing. Stacey, I don't get what they did this offseason. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. And it just seems like it's got to be so frustrating when you root for a team that's right on the precipice of being a really dominant team and doesn't try to take advantage of it. I don't quite understand it at all.
Yeah. The most that the Orioles have done this offseason is schedule a bobblehead day of their owner.
Literally. It's ridiculous.
That's so embarrassing, and I feel bad for Orioles fans because they thought we have this young core Everyone's saying we're going to do really well. They wanted us to be patient with what they were doing because, the Orioles were in the playoffs in 2016, and then you didn't see them for a while because they were basically rebuilding and
Yeah.
stocking up on all these young kids who happen to be doing really well. Then you get new ownership, you get new blood in the owner's box, and you're thinking to yourself as an Orioles fan, oh my God, finally, we have someone who's going to want to spend. This is great. Okay, cool. And what happens? It's the
Stacey,
same old thing.
what's crazy to think about is the Orioles' payroll going into the season is $151 million, which for a new ownership that bought them for, what was it, $4 billion, should absolutely be able to spend more than that. Stacey, these are their top salaries. Let me read them off to you now. Consider what the Yankees signed guys for. These are the Orioles' top salaries. Ready? Zach Eflin, $18 million a year. Tyler O'Neill, 16.5. Charlie Morton, 15. Andrew Kittredge, 9. Gary Sanchez, 8.5. Gary Sanchez is getting $8.5 million a year. Yeah, that Gary Sanchez from the Baltimore Orioles. Wild to think about. Two more before we get to the next segment. Stacey, the Tampa Bay Rays, they signed Ha-Seong Kim and Eloy Jimenez. Did nothing else. They're in a weird spot, being going to be playing in not a real stadium next year. So really weird one on that one. And let's move to the Yankees, who I will say we're going to rush through this only because we've spent the entire last 3 months evaluating every move the Yankees have made.
Yeah.
But just to keep you guys informed, they signed Max Fried, Paul Goldschmidt, Cody Bellinger, traded Nestor Cortez for Devin Williams. They traded Jose Trevino for Fernando Cruz and Alex Jackson. They re-signed Tim Hill, Mark Leiter Jr. after a long arbitration process. Luke Weaver, who also changed his number, and Jonathan Loaizaga. They lost John Birdie, Tim Meza, Lou Trevino, Anthony Rizzo, Tommy Kahnle, Gleyber Torres, Clay Holmes, and Juan Soto, of course. We've broke down the Yankees all offseason, Stacey. Not really much of many secrets here of what they've done. Right now, I think it's the Yankees' division to lose. Just being flat out honest. I think it's a gross failure if the Yankees somehow don't win this division. Right. I think they're better than every team, and I think the one team that had the ability to leapfrog ahead of them was the Baltimore Orioles, who, again, their third highest player is Gary Sanchez. So say what you want to say about what the Orioles did. I think this is the Yankees' division to lose, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think they're going to run away with the division. I don't see that happening, but it is theirs to lose. And if they do, that would be very upsetting.
Agreed. Yeah. They should have a good year. They should. And I'll say this. A lot of teams that we just went through and throughout the rest of baseball would have followed last year's World Series appearance with doing absolutely nothing. Thinking, we had a successful year. We should be good again next year. Be proud of what the Yankees did this offseason. They made a lot of moves. I'd say upgraded their team, and they pivoted excellently after losing a player like Juan Soto. Yeah, I'd be following this offseason. I'd be proud about what the Yankees, as a Yankee fan, I'd be proud about what they did.
Because if they had kept Juan Soto, they wouldn't have been able to make a lot of those moves.
No,
there would have been.
And I think overall they're a better baseball team. I do think today they're a better baseball team than they were a year ago. I was more excited a year ago, but I think right now they're a better baseball team than they were a year ago.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that. And I know we're going to have angry comments, so leave them below. We're ready for them. Coming up next, is there a Yankee that was similar in any way to Aaron Rodgers during his tenure with the New York Jets? We're going to try and figure that out.
So, Stacey, full disclosure with the people who listen to our show, we do record during the season specifically. We do record the day before or the night before the next episode comes out. And it is Super Bowl Sunday today while we're recording. We are coming to you on Monday, the following the game. So congratulations again to whoever won the Super Bowl. But, Stacey, it was revealed at 2 p.m. Eastern time that Aaron Rodgers would not be returning to the New York Jets. And his tenure included a lot of excitement, them giving him a boatload of money, him tearing his Achilles 4 plays into his Jets career, coming back the next year and it being an unmitigated disaster. And I do want to say this. For a guy that claims he hates being in the spotlight, doesn't like all the attention, doesn't want to be covered as much as he does, doesn't understand why everyone's so obsessed with him, I find it a little weird that he allowed a Netflix documentary to be made on him, where a camera crew followed him to Costa Rica for a drug retreat. I find it a little weird that he would do a online sports show, Pat McAfee show, once a week, every week. That is streamed by a ton of people live every week. And I find it even more weird for a guy that, again, hates attention, leaks that he will not be returning to his team at 2 p.m., 4 hours before kickoff for the biggest game of the year. Seems a little weird, no?
Oh, I'm trying to think of guys that were signed where I'm trying to think of anyone who got injured right away. Because that would be a good comparison, but I can't think of anyone who was signed to a big contract and then was injured immediately.
Well, that's basically my thought, is who is the player the Yankees brought in that you had a lot of hope for, a lot of upside for, and it wound up being an unmitigated disaster. And to Yankees' credit, I don't think they've had a lot of these. I don't think they've had a lot of big market players they've brought in that it wound up being an absolute unbelievable disaster. I guess you could compare it to Jacoby Ellsbury. He had an awful Yankee tenure. He was a top-tier free agent. He was probably the top guy that offseason. Yankees brought him in, gave him a massive contract, and he wound up being atrocious for them. I mean, literally as bad as you possibly could be. However, how much was Jacoby Ellsbury in the public eye? Was he saying a lot of stuff?
No, I don't think people knew what his voice sounded like.
No, he never spoke publicly, ever. He certainly signed with the Yankees, got a truck. By the way, he's exactly what you want to be as a professional athlete. You sign your massive contract, you never have a debilitating injury, and now I'm sure he's living somewhere in Florida in a mega mansion with $150 million to sit on. So good for Jacoby Ellsbury. But is there a player the Yankees have ever brought in where, because at least Jacoby Ellsbury, he went away into the quiet night. They cut him, they released him, they paid him a boatload of money for the next 5 years after his contract was expired, and then he was gone. And you never heard him speak out. You never heard him say anything ill about the Yankees. He never said he hated the Bronx, never said he hated the franchise. He wasn't on Pat McAfee once a week. He wasn't, coming back, not retiring. None of this ever happened with Jacoby Ellsbury. Specifically, Jacoby Ellsbury never, before Game 7 of the World Series, announced, I'm coming back or I'm not coming back. That never happened either. So I don't know. Maybe a player with a lot of turmoil around him that I would say Yankees brought him right after, Alex Rodriguez. But you know what, Stacey? Alex Rodriguez won 3 MVPs and a World Series with the Yankees. Little different than what Aaron Rodgers did with the Jets. Yeah. So I don't know if there's that player. We can credit the Yankees to not having these awful signings and awful moments in their history. But I don't know if that player exists that they signed, we're all excited for, came in and was an unmitigated disaster for them.
Yeah, like A-Rod's unmitigated disaster part of his career happened toward the end. It didn't happen at the beginning of the run, when he was going on the radio and yelling about the steroids and storming off and doing all this crazy stuff and, being suspended at first for 211 games and then having it lowered to a season.
He did sue the Yankees.
Yes.
He did sue the team he played for. That's
why in that way they're similar, but the tenure was so long and it didn't happen until the end of it that
there was greatness.
Yes, like there was, like you said, 4 plays and he hurts himself.
Yeah,
there
was greatness with A-Rod. There was, and you know what? Like, say what you want, and there's a lot of people that have opinions on A-Rod throughout his career. He did win a championship, and I know it was only one, sure, but he did win a title. Rodgers didn't make the playoffs.
Aaron Rodgers on the Jets feels like that Family Guy meme where they're at the baseball game and it's like, welcome to baseball season. It's the Mets. And then someone hits a home run and then they say season over.
Season's over. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it felt like with him on the Jets. And
it is very Jets. It is very New York Jets. I was more aggravated earlier on Sunday when at 2 p.m. when the Super Bowl is in 4 hours. That's when the news comes out from a guy who
don't say that fame. Don't say you hate the fame and you hate attention, but then, go on every podcast you can think of. Joe Rogan's podcast, you're on McAfee all the time.
Yep.
You're also saying crazy things too, like, oh, I'm going to be RFK's vice president. Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to find time. Well, now he would have had the time to do that now.
he never has an issue offering an opinion on certain issues. And I have no problem with that. If you're an athlete that wants to do that, go ahead. Say whatever you want.
But don't say that you don't like the attention because this is going to bring you attention. Exactly.
I have no doing that. I get it. But don't complain when the attention comes your way and act like, I I didn't want this. Don't claim that you can.
Well, he
you
doesn't
can
like
run
bad. It's funny. He doesn't like bad attention, but everything he says brings the bad attention. You know what I mean? Like he acts like, oh, why are people reacting this way? It's like, why are you telling everyone you took ashwagandha and you were like
ayahuasca.
Oh, ayahuasca. That other stuff is like gut stuff that I take.
What I love about the ayahuasca thing is claiming you don't want the attention for it, and then it becomes the biggest talking point in all of sports.
You get really sick on that stuff too.
Yeah, if you watch the documentary Enigma that came out on Netflix about him,
you couldn't pay me to watch that.
They have the whole experience of him on ayahuasca on film, though, Stacey. So any guy to me who doesn't want attention would not.
So was he getting sick on camera?
Not really. It's just they're all loopy and they're all going crazy.
Because I know people who've done it where they basically give you a bucket because they know you're gonna get sick from it.
Yeah, no, and it looks uncomfortably bad.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't want that kind of attention and that kind of circus to surround you, I don't know if you'd bring a camera crew with Netflix to Costa Rica with you to film it.
Here's a question.
Sure.
Or here's a thought. A-Rod started his career before social media. And when he ended his career, social media was around, but it wasn't like it is now. People make livings on social media.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Podcasts are the way to broadcast everything now.
Yeah, they are.
Do you think that A-Rod, if he were an athlete now, would be the type to do the things that Aaron Rodgers is doing? Because I think 100%. So.
I think A-Rod. I think A-Rod is lucky that he was playing just before this era of social media existed.
Because I always say that about myself with college. Thank God that we took all our pictures to the photo mat to get developed, and they weren't instantaneously on phones or digital cameras. So every stupid thing that I did when I was away at school, no one knows about it.
I think the fact that Alex Rodriguez is one of those players that is very, very grateful that his whole career his whole back scene of his career wasn't able to be filmed 24/7. I'll tell you another guy that we both love that I think is another guy that's unbelievably grateful that his whole career wasn't on film also.
Derek Jeter.
Derek Jeter is so grateful that phones and cameras on phones weren't a thing when he was in his 20s.
Yeah, well, most of Gen X is thankful for that, let me tell you, because even though we weren't famous athletes, we all did dumb stuff in college and in our 20s, and it wasn't broadcast to the world. It wasn't posted on Facebook, not on Instagram. There was no Twitter. When I think about that, I thank whoever runs the universe every day that social media wasn't around when I was in my 20s and in my teens, because it would have been an unmitigated disaster. So thank you for that. World.
Wild child.
Yeah. No, I just did dumb things. I wasn't really that wild, but
you weren't going on ayahuasca retreats in your 20s?
No.
Neither was I.
Yeah.
But I have 3 more years of my 20s left, so we'll see. You never know.
Yeah, you still have time. You still have time to be
holds.
Yeah, you have time to be goofy. So, yeah, Yankees did well this offseason. Some other teams did well this offseason. We'll see how things work out.
2 big takeaways for me out of these 2 divisions is what the Yankees and the Red Sox did. Honestly, I think both of those teams had tremendous off seasons.
Yeah, and people like to joke that the Mets didn't really do anything besides Juan Soto and Pete Alonso, but they made some moves, and it'll be interesting to see how some of those moves work out, like Clay Holmes to the rotation. So that's something to keep an eye on. But they made interesting moves in this offseason. And we'll see how everything goes, because you never know how things will go, really. A team may look good on paper, and then it could be a total disaster because of injuries and whatever else, or maybe just things not working out for the teams. I always harken back to 2011. When they predicted in March that the Phillies and the Red Sox were going to be in the World Series. And I remember joking as a Yankee fan saying, well, then why is everyone else playing the season if you guys are automatically thinking that the Phillies and the Red Sox are going to make the World Series? And what happened? Red Sox, thanks to the Yankees, the first time and only time I ever cheered a walk-off home run against my own team, because I knew it was going to knock the Red Sox out of the playoffs. And the Phillies were knocked out in the first round. So, yeah, that's the greatest thing about baseball. and also the worst. Anything can happen.
Yep, anything. It's
Yep.
crazy. We're in for a good season, I think.
I think so too. Thank you for making Locked On Yankees your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of baseball and humor, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. You can find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And remember, we're 5 days a week again until the Yankees are eliminated from the playoffs. Also, leave your fan mail Friday questions below the pinned comment that I promise I'm going to put on YouTube. Leave it there. So that'll do it for this edition of Locked On Yankees. I'm Stacey Gotsoulias.
And I'm Brian McKeon. We'll catch you guys tomorrow.